Meeting of the Carver Board of Selectmen, April 24th, 2017. This meeting is being cablecast by Area 58 Community Access Media, Channel 15. There are openings on several committees. Please refer to the Board of Selectmen page on our website for a listing and application. Donations to the food pantry can be made at Shane Gives Thanks, located in Carver Square. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, you're going to say it?
Ms. Maroney with our community prayer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Almighty God, humbly we pray your blessing as we concern our life with the opportunity to serve our community. Enhance us with your spirit of dignity and selflessness. May we become instruments of support and understanding as we seek to bring an environment of trust and purpose among all who provide the many services that make us all that we can become. Help us achieve the goals of our commitment in this office that is now our responsibility. And especially, we lift our prayers for all the citizens of the community that we have been allowed to serve, that they may discover the fullness and joy of life that we all seek. And please keep those serving in our armed forces and our first responders always in our hearts and prayers. Amen.
Amen. Now we reach the point in our meeting where we offer Carver citizens the opportunity to address the board. We set aside 10 minutes at the start of each meeting to do so. We ask any residents that do want to speak to try to spend no more than 3 minutes so that others may have the opportunity to speak. Was there anyone that wanted to address the board this evening? There being none, we will move to reorganization. I guess I'd ask Mr. Malinowski if he would preside as moderator in asking for nominations.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Are there any nominations for Chairman of the Board of Selectmen?
I would nominate Ron.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Are there any other nominations?
Excuse me one second.
I think we could have the discussion.
Okay, discussion.
Yeah?
If I could just say that since I am taking a new job,
Yes.
as much as I appreciate the opportunity, it really, I think to be fair to the board, since there is a chance that on occasion I might not be able to make a meeting, I would prefer to not continue on as chair. So if anyone has any other nominations they'd like to make.
Yeah, with that being said, I think it makes sense because we've had so much continuity with this board and we've been doing great working together. I would like to keep that as much as possible. So I would like to nominate Alan, who was vice chair last year, to serve as chair, and hopefully we can convince Mr.
Mr. Robinson,
Clark.
do you accept that as a friendly amendment?
I do.
And do you second that amendment?
You learn as you go. And so I would absolutely second that amended motion.
So is there any discussion?
Well, I just want to thank Ron for being open and honest about, your new path, and that, he wouldn't be able to have the commitment, and hopefully that Alan will accept.
Well, we know that there's already a belief the meetings will be shorter.
Certainly. There was talk of that.
Stealing my thunder.
I suppose I should say with that, did I accept the nomination?
Well,
And I do. Just because I don't want to put you on the spot.
is there any additional discussion?
You are a terrible moderator. Just move the
I
vote.
Can I call a vote for the chairman of Alan Dunham? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Mr. Dunham, you're now the new chairperson, and you have taken over the meeting.
Gotta move. Can't we just move the sign?
He is. Congratulations.
Thank you. And I trust my fellow board members will endeavor to keep me straight in case I mess up, which I invariably will.
As best we can.
Okay. All right. Guess we'll take nominations for vice chair.
With what I just said previously, if you don't mind, I'll make a motion to nominate Mr. Clark as vice chair.
Yeah, I'll second that. The new light.
You look
I-
funny over here.
Any discussion? Mr. Clark? will you be able-
I would be willing to accept that role.
Thank you.
Good.
Any other discussion?
Nope.
If not, all those in favor of Ron Clark being vice chair, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 400. All right, so there you have it, your new reorganized board.
I don't know that it deserves applause.
Well, it does. You're taking on a big commitment.
All right, every year, since Juan and I have come on now, we go ahead and at our first meeting of reorganization, we go ahead and vote on basic policies we've developed as the board. So the first one we need to go ahead and adopt/reaffirm is the Board of Selectmen Code of Conduct.
I'll make that motion to reaffirm our code of conduct of the Board of Selectmen.
Second?
Discussion, please.
No.
Hearing none. All those in favor of affirming the code of, Board of Selectmen Code of Conduct, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 400. All right, Bloggers Code of Conduct.
I'll make the motion to approve or reaffirm the Bloggers Code of Conduct.
Second?
Any discussion? Just for the public, this came about during a time when there was a lot of not real friendly social media type things going on with a lot of blogs. And the board felt it was important for us to, as the leaders of the community, to take the lead, to have a code of conduct. And that's how this came about. So all those in favor of affirming the Bloggers Code of Conduct, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? 4-0. All right, the agenda policy.
I'll make the motion to reaffirm our agenda policy. Nobody wants to talk tonight.
Second?
Good job.
Any discussion? All right, all those in favor of the agenda policy, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, 4-0. And finally, the financial management policy.
I'll make the motion to reaffirm our financial management policy.
Second?
Discussion. Again, this is a policy that we first formulated and adopted as a board back in 2014. And we took it to town meeting, so it become the town's financial policies. And fortunately, town meeting did go ahead and vote them as the town's financial policies. And with that, that's why we've been able to build a new fire station under the levy limit, police station next on deck. So start thinking about it, chief. All right, all those in favor of adopting the financial management policy, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, 4-0. Now we come to a good part, and ahead of schedule.
Here we go.
Ding.
I've been hearing that a lot.
Darn straight. Swearing in of new police officers. Chief Dupuy, if you could please come forward and lead us with the honors here.
Good evening. And before we start, congratulations to both of you. And you talked about continuity of the board. I'm glad to see it remains the same and we keep moving forward. And I appreciate all the support you've given myself and our department and look forward to continuing that in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So tonight we continue forward in the hiring process of the new police officers. Over the past year, we've worked on filling the 3 open slots that were vacated by some retiring police officers. Officer Matthew Rayner, who's here in the audience tonight, began his break-in period earlier this year, but due to some scheduling conflicts, was not formally sworn in before the board. He's here tonight, so we can remedy that. He's doing a great job so far, and soon will complete his break-in period and be out as a patrol officer on the streets with us, with the other officers. The second officer being sworn in is a brand-new officer, Officer Joshua Shaw. Joshua recently completed the hiring process by successfully passing his physical abilities test. This was the final hurdle in the process, and once he's sworn in, he will begin his break-in period. Joshua is a 31-year-old resident of Carver. He has a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from Curry College, and he's already completed the Massachusetts Police Training Committee's full-time police academy. He previously served as a police officer on the island of Nantucket. Once he completes his 3-month break-in period, he'll be assigned to one of the 3 patrol shifts as a patrol officer. I'm very pleased to present both officers to you tonight to be sworn in. And thank you again to the Board of Selectmen, Mr. Malinowski, the Carver Police Union, and the residents of Carver for their continued support in filling these open positions and moving our department forward. We really appreciate that. So if you don't mind, I'll have Lynn Doyle come up and swear the 2 officers in.
Our pleasure.
Lynn, did one at a time or both together? Both together?
Whatever.
Okay, you can both come up.
So they can take your picture. Just get my back. Okay, please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name. Do solemnly swear that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the United States of America and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and will support the Constitution and laws thereof. So help me God. Congratulations. Thank you.
Welcome.
Welcome aboard.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you, and congrats.
Despite Mr. Tinkham's concerns.
Good job, good luck.
Congratulations.
You guys want to come around and get a picture? Yep. 4 of you?
That's why I dressed up tonight.
Turn your back to me.
Come up if you want.
Thank you.
In the middle. Good enough, Mike? We can stay here a little longer.
Should have Jerry take these photos. Where are you, Jerry? Oh, he's got his phone in mine also. Yeah.
Does the new officer like to say anything? Put him on the spot.
No, they don't want to do that. So thank you very much. We have some cake and refreshments in the next room if anybody wants any. And actually, in the audience is our next person that in probably about 6 months from now will be up here getting sworn in, Jeremy Farquharson. He also successfully completed all his required tests and will be scheduled to start the academy on June 5th. So the next one in line is
Outstanding.
Good luck.
Thank you. Now we're going to clear your room and go have some cake. So
Could you save us some this time?
we'll bring you some over.
Or at least bring it back in or something.
We planned it better this time. We have 2 cakes. So.
Jeremy, best of luck in the academy.
Thank you very much.
Good
And
luck.
this is a fun time to be on the board when we're swearing in new police officers. This is good stuff.
Thank you.
And Jeremy, I think your dad can still take you in most of the events, so just,
Thank you. Do you guys want me to bring cake over, or are you going to come get some?
we'll pop over afterwards.
Ron definitely needs cake. If not, we'll hear about it.
Oh, for Pete's sakes.
Again and again and again.
Well, that's a simple request.
Cookies?
Oh, Helen,
Yes.
by the way, next
Cookies and
meeting,
buffalo
you and
chicken.
Ron have to switch places. 'Cause I don't want Ron so close to Michael.
Oh, good.
No, we're keeping our spaces. I like her to my right. She's to the right of me politically, so she should be to the right of me while we're sitting.
Guess I should move on now, huh?
I thought you had the same view.
Don't forget, we're still live, so
Yes.
be careful what you say in
So I'm
the
about to-
Just said it.
Okay, getting back on track.
Good luck with that.
We're looking for the Serpent Board of Selectmen Representative, the annual appointment for 2017-18. Mr.
I believe in your packet you have the appointment of John Woods and Chris Vincent as the prime and alternate positions for the Serpent Joint Transportation Planning Group. The Joint Transportation Planning Group is a group made up of all the representative towns that help prioritize where federal funding goes over, I think it's a 7-year period. So they represent the town, and, that's how we got funding for Route 58 project. Although we don't have anything in the docket right now, I think the next big project in our area is supporting something along the, in Middleborough with the Rotary. And there's some discussions on redesigning that, which is going to be an expensive project, but as we all know, that is a traffic nightmare leaving in the morning.
And also, speaking of the new 58, I read the sign, paving starts May 2nd.
Oh, I'm sorry, and then there's one other one, is the Serpent Commission member. This is usually the chair of the planning board, and the alternate would be our planning director. Since we don't have a full-time director, we do have Jack Hunter, who is filling in with this on a temporary basis. So if we can appoint the chair as the commission member, and Mr. Hunter is the alternate, we should do that as well.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion. Hearing none. Those in favor of these appointments, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Hearing none. Pass 4-0. Moving on, Board of Selectmen update. Gonna go ladies first. Ms. Maroney, would you like to start off?
Hi, everyone. Just so we can break a record tonight, I don't have a lot to say except to thank all of the candidates that, took the time to run for an office. Whether you win or lose, it is important to get involved with the town, and I only encourage others to continue that excitement. And I also want to congratulate all the winners, including my fellow selectmen, Ron and Alan. And that is it.
Okay, Mr. Robertson.
I don't have much to say either. I want to thank Lynn Doyle's team putting together. They sat in that freezing
Oh,
cold
my goodness.
gymnasium
No kidding.
all day long. There were people with blankets and shawls around them, but they did it professionally, and, my hat's off to that team. I think they did a great job.
Yep, I agree.
That's all I had, Al.
Mr. Clark.
Chairman,
I would also like to just thank everybody that turned out to vote. I will say, though, I've got to express a level of disappointment that we had, I believe, 690 voters out of 8,200 potential voters. About an 8% of the town turned out. And while I recognize that there weren't a lot of contested races, I really hope that we can find a way to encourage citizens to participate more in town government. We had 4 positions that were filled by write-in vote because nobody took out papers to run for the office. Someone could have walked into any of those positions simply by taking out papers. So, I know it's tempting to say, gee, things are going so well, it cuts down to the public interest. I find that a little hard to believe that people are all that satisfied, because certainly it seems you bump into people that are willing to bend your ear when you want to discuss an issue. So, while I'm very thankful to those that did turn out to vote and stood out in the rain and for the entire day, I think it would be worth the board's while and maybe working with the town clerk to see if we can't find a way to try to stimulate some greater participation in town government.
I have to do something.
Anything else?
No, that's basically all I have right now. Thank you, sir.
Take it out of the chair seat and you just shorten it right up. I like that. Okay, I want to echo Ron's comments to thank everybody that did come out to vote. As Ron, I think everybody up here shares the same disappointment at the turnout of being only about 8%. It is what it is. Voters that were there have spoken, and those that weren't there, they didn't get a chance to have their voice heard, which is kind of a shame. I also want to congratulate everybody that did take out papers and ran. I really want to thank Dave Folson and Connie Shea. They ran good campaigns. They were total gentlemen. I think that's pretty much been a hallmark now of most of the selectmen races for quite a while now, that, there's no backstabbing or, telling tales out of school. And although we did, as a newcomer, try to trick Dave into standing in the puddle, but that's all right. But I want to congratulate both of them for running and for taking the chance and to put themselves out there, because it's not easy to put yourself out there to run for a position, and for getting involved. And I hope to see them get involved, Finance Committee, Conservation Commission. There's a lot of different things that I'd like to see that enthusiasm that they've generated, especially among their supporters, have these people go ahead and start signing up for a lot of these boards and committees, because there are a lot of them out there that need to be filled. Okay, get away from the election a little bit.
Mr. Chair, can I just mention one thing?
Sure.
Which I just want to put for a future agenda item, because we've all just spoke about this. Would it be possible to put on the agenda to have each committee chair come in and explain to the general public what their roles are, as, for example, the planning board? For some reason, when I first started in town, I had no idea of the level of authority a lot of these committees have and how much they impact the town. So as a start to helping people want to be involved, as if maybe we could invite the chairs to the meeting, 1 week at a time, to explain it to the residents what their functions are.
I like that. That's a good idea.
So how about if we take the top 12 committees that have, the stature that has a lot of activities they're doing, and we schedule them one a month?
Yep.
At the meetings?
That would be good.
One each
Yeah,
meeting.
once each week, why not?
Okay. And we'll do that at the beginning of the meeting?
Yep.
Okay, after the initial part.
Sounds good to me.
Mr. Upson, your feelings on that?
I think that's great. Maybe give them the summer break. If it's once a month, we only meet once a month, so,
But we make up for it.
The only problem is can we make this vote tonight since it wasn't on the agenda?
Basically, this would fall under the category of the chairman's authority to
Okay.
Yeah,
adjust
we
the
don't need to
agenda
vote
in
on
the
that.
future.
Okay.
I would
gotcha.
just ask the town administrator to make it so.
Yeah, I think requesting an agenda item is different, nothing you have to vote on.
All
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
got it. Just want to be safe.
Okay, I don't know if you guys remember, but I think it was last July, Connor Skinner came before us. He's the Eagle Scout that asked for permission to rehab the bandstand in Shirtliff Park. Well, he's getting ready to start moving forward on that project now, and he had a couple Facebook posts out there, and what he's looking for is, donations of materials, some monetary donations, and helpers and craftsmen. I told him that I did respond to him and said, when I'm hitting a nail, I'm like lightning. I don't strike the same place twice. And I have put my thumbs in jeopardy, but sometimes I can get paint to stay where it's supposed to go. But also some monetary support. He's thinking he may need about $700 for this project. So I'm asking any of the residents to reach out to Connor. Like I say, he has his own Facebook page, Connor Skinner, so you could reach out to him there, message him, or if you happen to see the post on either Everything Carver or Carver Helping Carver, reach out to him and let him know if you can, be some help to him, because I know he wants to move forward on this, and it's going to be a lot of work, and I think it's just tremendous that he's decided to take up this project to really rehab that bandstand, because it's showing its age. And also, finally, something I'd like to do, I'd like to see us, at the start of every meeting, we say, well, there's boards and committees that need to be filled. I would like at least once every 6 months, and maybe start next month, to have actually a list of all the vacancies by committee. Huh?
It's on our website.
Well, I went to the website and all I found was what committees there were, not the number of vacancies. Am I looking in the wrong spot? Okay, where is the right spot? Because if I have trouble finding it, maybe other people might. So just, you don't have to worry about it now. Just something to make sure.
It's on the Board of Selectmen's page.
And I went to the Board of Selectmen page, and it went to committees and boards.
We will do a tutorial on this at a later time, but then you'll be able to have the information to announce at
Exactly.
future meetings. Okay.
That's all.
Add time to.
All right, anything else? Moving on. We need to designate 2 Board of Selectmen members as formal representatives to attend meetings involving state agencies. Pleasure of the board.
Mr. Chairman, Sarah Hewen, who is ill tonight with a bad flu, and generously decided not to share it with us,
We're all very thankful.
did ask me to mention, as she had expressed previously, that she's very interested in being one of the representatives.
And I as well.
You want to be a member? I would have signed up for it too, but.
Me too, but first, should
Well, if you
we?
have chocolates.
No, I'd be more than happy to.
Thank you.
I'll take vanilla, please. Thank you.
I'll make a motion that Helen and Sarah represent us on that committee, recognizing that other members can attend,
Right.
but as our formal designated representatives, it would be Helen and Sarah.
Can I hear a second?
Second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of having Helen and Sarah be our formal representative to any meetings with state agencies, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Passed unanimous 4-0-0.
Did the chief say the cake was low calorie?
I have no idea, and I wasn't going to
Yes,
ask.
I heard him.
Just thought I'd ask.
So the openings of committees and boards
Yeah?
at carverma.gov.
She's like a dog with a bone. She's not going to let this go.
I don't blame her, because I had trouble
We
finding
update it regularly and make sure it's on the website, updated as positions get filled. So on the Board of Selectmen page, on the left-hand side, if you scroll down, it's called Openings on Committees, Boards, and Commissions.
Okay, I obviously didn't scroll down
complicated,
far
though.
enough, but I appreciate that clarification.
Through you, Mr. Chair, can I ask a question regarding all these?
Most certainly can.
Thank you. Regarding all these reappointments, don't we reappoint for the Plymouth County Commission representative as well? I mean, I'm serving right now, but doesn't that happen at the same time?
I think the term ends on that at the end of the fiscal year.
Oh, okay,
I
gotcha.
believe, we get a
Okay,
letter from
not a
Plymouth
big
County on that,
deal.
don't we?
Yep, okay,
June that you were
okay. Yep, no problem.
So you
I just wanted to
haven't-
make sure I
You
wasn't
haven't
missing.
fulfilled your responsibility yet. Still have a few more months.
I've done a mighty good job.
You've been doing a wonderful job,
Thank you.
even though you don't know when the term's up.
That's because I just wanted
All
to.
right, moving on. Approval of Corey policy. Mr. Town Administrator, you want to bring us up on this
Yes, in your
one?
packet is a policy for when we do Cory checks. Sometimes when the town is asked to do Cory checks for sports activities and so forth. And this is a policy that was recommended by town council, I believe, Elaine. So basically, we just need to have the Board of Selectmen approve a policy for doing that. Because, sometimes people don't pass them, and we need to just have a process to go forward and let them know, which is laid out in the policy.
Looking through the policy, if I may.
Go right ahead.
Looking through the policy, this appears to be similar to what we just did with the public records, where there would be certified designees, so that everything wouldn't be coming through Elaine. Like, the public safety officers would be doing their own Corys as they do now, and the school department would do their own Corys and whatnot. The intent isn't for suddenly every Cory in town to flow through Elaine. So I believe the fire chief is
Chiefs
certified.
will continue to do their own. This is for, more sports activities.
We Cory Council on Aging employees, DPW, custodians, library, volunteers, recreation, such as basketball.
And how was that being
Little
done
League.
before this policy? How are we doing it?
We were doing it, but it was a very loose policy.
Okay.
Less formalized.
Yes.
Correct. So those that, for instance, what you just mentioned might go through you.
Those all go through.
Those would all go through you, but the police, fire, ambulance,
Nothing else goes
school they'd still do what they've done?
Correct.
Okay.
When you say volunteer, do you mean just when they're, you don't mean like for a committee, do you?
No, anyone who would be alone with children
Okay, there you
or
go.
people over 65.
Yep, okay.
Wait,
Stop it. I know where that's going.
Could I have a motion, please?
Yes.
I'll make a motion to approve.
people over 65 need to be
Oh,
watched?
Mr. Clark, do I have to gavel you down here?
Second.
I'm only a couple of years away.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion without worrying about Mr. Clark's age.
It really hits home, doesn't it?
Wow. For someone to spend time with me in a couple of years, they're going to have to be Corey checked?
Hearing none. Before this gets any further out of hand, all those in favor of the Corey policy, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those
Just for my
opposed,
own safety.
hearing none, passes unanimously,
do.
4-0-0.
Form your wife of that.
Oh, Lord
your
help
wife.
me. You sure you don't want to be chairman?
Oh, my God. That's the greatest
All right,
I was okay for the kids, but over 65 and
Mr.
over?
Clark.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Approval to engage in the process to
my
change
gosh,
health
this is
insurance
funny.
benefits under General Law C-32B, squiggly mark 21-23.
Question, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
This is simply to authorize
Thank you, Daddy.
the process to move forward. It's not committing to any changes.
That's what it
That's
says.
correct.
Yep.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Discussion.
No, none. It's a good plan.
Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion
Mr. Chairman,
passes 4-0-0.
the next item on the agenda for the Plymouth County budget vote, some of the Plymouth County officials are in Pembroke. They're going to try to come to Carver as quickly as possible. They're not sure when they're going to get out, so what I suggested to them is we'd leave this to the last item on the agenda. If they make it, they make it. If they don't make it, they don't make it.
Okay. Well,
If
if they
that's a-
don't make it, we want to hear about it, so we would table it?
No, I'd say.
No,
Yeah, no, what I mean is I'll give an update,
Oh, okay.
but we just won't have anybody from Plymouth County to actually
We'd have to
comment.
make a decision without their
Yeah,
input.
no, that's not a problem.
what's the board's pleasure on that?
I'm very comfortable with that.
David?
As I am.
Ellen?
Yes.
Okay. We will hold that one in abeyance until the end of our public portion of the meeting. So, which now brings us up at 8:25. Holy mackerel. Town administrator update, just because we're early, does not give you license to go long.
Oh, my God.
As a very quick update, the state on April 12th, the Secretary of Environmental Affairs approved our final record of decision to grant a Phase 1 waiver for the urban renewal plan as it relates to the Route 44 development. We anticipate getting DHCD sign-off within the next 30 days to complete that project.
Now, is
From
that the
the
MEPA portion that we just completed then?
So this is the MEPA as it relates to the urban renewal plan.
Right.
Now, there still has to be a full environmental impact study done on the entire project, which the developer will be responsible for. But the phase that approves the urban renewal plan with this has been approved by the MEPA process. So this completes, in essence, the town's responsibility. We'll get certification from the state over the next 30 days for that. Then in the future, the developer has to go forward and do a full-blown 3-4-inch document on all of the impacts for the project, which is the developer's responsibility. So from the town standpoint, this completes our stage at this juncture.
And does he do that prior to the final state approval?
Not the state approval we're getting is on this. He'll then have to get another state approval for his piece.
And so what's the timetable on that?
That can take anywhere from 6 to 9 months.
Okay.
And I know they're working on it right now, so they may be able to accelerate that, but it is a fairly lengthy process.
Okay.
But
Thank you.
basically, our part of it's done now.
That's correct. And I
The only
do,
thing that would happen now is if something comes before the RDA, if the developer can't reach an agreement with property owners.
and I did speak to the developer today, and once the state releases his approval, or the approval of this, the DHCD, then I believe he has 30 days to close on some of the previous agreements he's already negotiated on that. So he will then execute his purchase and sale based upon this timetable.
May I,
Please.
when you just said the developer getting approval from all the property owners, I was under the impression that they already did.
The developer has negotiated with some of the property owners to buy their property. there is a timetable when he has to execute those agreements.
Yeah,
That execution is 30 days after the state approves this piece from DHCD, which should occur by the middle of May.
There are other property owners in there that he's, I'm assuming,
He's negotiating with, but they
being
haven't come to an
negotiating with
agreement
right
yet.
now.
Correct.
all right. So just for full disclosure, I'm going to abstain from this vote. I'm not going to abstain.
There's no vote
There's
tonight.
no vote on
Oh,
it.
good, 'cause I was
This is an
gonna s-
informational only.
Okay, because I'm not going to all the time, but just until
Yep.
those agreements and.
Yep, this is just an update.
Okay,
that
great,
we-
thank you.
Basically, this is a major milestone. We've
Okay,
completed it.
that is great, okay. Misunderstood. That's it?
That's it.
You have other updates.
Well, I don't know if I'm, Mr. Chairman, would you like me to continue?
Yes, please.
Oh,
I'm
thank
sorry. I thought you'd,
Right,
No, since when do you ask?
He never asked permission from me.
Yeah, no kidding. He must be afraid of you, Alan.
just a brief update on the elementary school project and the middle high school acceleration repair project. Both are moving forward well. All the steel, as you see, has been constructed. A lot of the floors have been poured over the elementary school. They continue to be ahead of schedule and under budget. And by early June, we should start to see some work, if not late May, on the middle high school. They're going to start with, once the heating season's over, they're then going to start to take the boilers offline and then start to remove those and repair that as part of the boiler project. And they're also putting some temporary windows for a few places on the school just to get mocked so they can actually build those and move those forward quickly. So again, no issues are happening there. That's moving along very, very well.
question, did they ever get a camera up for the people, the public to
Yes.
go to on the school website to view the progress? I know they were going to, and they were researching
Yeah,
it.
there
and-
is a camera that's on there that we have access to as part of our responsibility for watching it. I know they do snapshots on that to put those out publicly. I don't know if the camera is allowed to be viewed by the community on a regular basis, given the contract, but we'll take a look at that.
Yeah, 'cause I mean, fire department had, well,
Right, and in the fire department, it was done internally. It wasn't done through an outside contractor. The project we have in the work that's being done, it's so sophisticated that when you're walking around with your smartphone, if you see something in the building that you don't like how it is, you snap a picture of that. That then gets your GPS code from where you're at, that logs it into a database tied into the plans as to when there was an issue, so it can actually document that. So it's very sophisticated
Okay.
from that standpoint compared to the fire station was just a live feed as you were watching that. But I will check to see if we can get what the status is of getting the ability of having some limited live streaming process.
anybody else on elementary school, high school update? All right, moving on to the open meeting violation from 2014 by Mr. Belbin.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we did receive on April 6 a response to several violations alleged violations that Mr. Belbin submitted back going in. Some of these meetings took place in 2014. He actually submitted this request on August 8th of 2016. With that, of the 5 issues that he brought up, the state only saw that there was one area that they agreed with him that there was a violation. There was another section that, although he didn't request this violation, after the state reviewed some minutes, they found out that there was an alternative violation. But basically, 3 of them, or you can call that 4 of them, were denied. I think in our research, Mr. Belbin has filed about 30 violations against the town over the last 5 years. Most were rejected. All of them have been resolved. And it appears that less than 10 were agreed to by the state. And that 10 includes items that they said were not intentional, several of those, and even areas where they said it was a de minimis violation. So that's kind of where we stand with those requests coming in.
Now, does that put us current with all his, does they have any more outstanding sitting out there? Do
He
we
still
know?
ha- Yes, there's still more outstanding, and it does take the state, a year or so to review these, and he has more of them outstanding.
Okay.
Can I have a question?
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Dave?
Just listening to the numbers that have been filed, I'm assuming that there is a cost to all this, and I'm assuming that there is legal fees,
Yes.
legal counsel, town council fees to this. Do we have a open mic to say how much it really all of this is costing the town by one person?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the exact down to the cent number, but what I can tell you is a couple things, is to give you an idea, this was a 6-page response that the state lawyers had to put together in response to his piece. That 6 pages, takes a fair amount of time of the research for them to put this together. So I can't comment on what the state's cost is. What I can say is, in looking at Carver's legal bills for responding to these, it's in the tens of thousands of dollars in legal bills. And that doesn't include the hundreds of hours that staff has to put into these, to do additional research and everything tied into it. So it's a big endeavor. It's a big endeavor. And again, we're all human. Sometimes we make mistakes. I think, as the state said, of the ones that they did approve, one was de minimis. I've never seen the state actually use that word in something, but I think that tells a lot. And several were non-intentional.
Yeah.
And the whole open meeting regulation is an evolution. And, every time the state makes a new ruling, then you have to go back and relook at the regulations and how it's interpreted. So when those things happen, we make adjustments. We made adjustments a few months ago with how we were doing executive session. And although we had a broad layout of what was to be looked at in executive session, when it came time to going in there, we would specify that. And now we're just trying to be more clear about that than we were before. So hopefully that answers your question, but, we're definitely, tens of thousands of dollars plus hundreds of hours of staff time.
Ms. Maroney?
I don't know how deep you know the open meeting law, I don't have it memorized at all. Is there anywhere in the law that states abuse of these submissions by a resident? This seems excessive for what has come, what the decisions have been.
Well, particularly when they're using the word de minimis and non-intentional. I mean,
Right.
there's no deliberate actions here. I think we run a very transparent and open government here. We're trying to do the best that we can. We are a small community. We are a small staff. We try to make sure that we're as transparent as we can. I think that anyone that really looks at how the town's been run in the last few years would agree with that.
Yeah.
As it relates to your direct comment, the answer to that, to my knowledge, is no. I think that people have the right, or an individual has the right, to file and file and file and file. Having said that, certainly the state who has to review this starts to see a pattern.
Right.
And, if the town was clearly violating things to an extent that the state needed to take action, they would issue fines, or they would do remedial stuff. Everyone that they have agreed with, whether it was de minimis or non-intentional, they have all been resolved to the state standpoint. A lot of these are resolved before the state even gets them, but they still have to comment on the fact that it did happen. But there's no stopping someone from submitting as many as they want.
So
It
if
is the
this-
right of a citizen,
Right.
whoever that may be,
Yeah.
if they feel that we as a board or any board in town has not followed their perception of the law, to file grievance, and
No, I
we
know.
end up having to pay for it.
I just think it should be in the law somewhere that if there's a percentage ratio of, one complaint, I don't want to say complainer, person, submitting. But I guess from our end, in terms of solving the expense, because I started asking Elaine to give me copies of attorney's bills when these first started, and the amount of money that we expend on it is sickening. It's sickening. So I guess my question is, at this point, can we look at it from the town's end and see that we obviously must see the pattern when we're reading these complaints? Is there any way we could just submit our response without seeking counsel, or do you think that would be putting us in jeopardy?
I think it puts us in jeopardy. I think that to respond to some of his complaints takes lots of staff time.
Okay.
So it diverts Elaine or I or others from our primary task. And, to some extent, the legal is a consultant. And where we have limited resources from a staffing
Yeah.
time standpoint, then we have to bring legal in, who's going to have to review it anyway, to
Right,
actually
okay.
respond in the proper way, with the Ts crossed, the Is dotted.
It's too bad.
Because certainly our council has a lot of credibility with the AG in the work that they have us do.
All right, okay.
I know I personally would
That
not
makes
feel
sense.
comfortable going ahead and just having us do it,
Yeah, it was
It's
just a
why we
thought.
retain town council. Yes, it costs us money, unfortunately, but, sometimes that's the cost of doing business.
Yeah, as long as it was publicly disclosed that it is costing us tens of thousands of dollars, that's the point I'm trying to make, is that it.
That's a valid point, Mr.
It is a
Valid
huge cost to the town.
Yeah.
I mean, the good news is that our legal bills are much lower than they were years ago. We do manage our legal much more aggressively.
Well, there's a positive.
Yes,
Okay, thank you. It was just an idea.
sure.
Anything else on the subject?
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
All right, minutes, licenses, topics not reasonably anticipated by the chairman 48 hours in advance of the meeting, and considering I didn't know I was going to be chairman, so I obviously couldn't have anticipated anything.
Good point.
Oh, yes, well, I was going to do that one last, because we do have one, but do you want me to take it now? Okay. Why don't we start off first with the minutes from April 4th, 2017?
I read them, I would move, accept them as they are.
A motion to accept?
I'll second.
Second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor of approving the minutes from April 4th, 2017, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Hearing none. Passes unanimously, 400. We have a request to use Shirtlift Park on July 16th and August 13th from noon to 4 p.m.
I'll make that motion to approve.
Second that.
That motion's been,
Second?
No, Dave already beat you to the second.
Sorry.
He's very quiet over there.
All right.
Any discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Hearing none. Passes 400, unanimous. All right, we do have an add-on, unexpected. It was left by your spots this morning from Old Colony Elder Services. Would like to hold their annual election of Board of Directors to serve for the next fiscal year. In order to facilitate the voting process, we ask that your nomination be chosen at your May meeting. So we need to come up with somebody to go ahead and be a representative to the Old Colony Elder Services.
Do we know if Carol Julius is willing to continue?
Yeah, absolutely.
Then I would suggest that we appoint Carol Julius to continue as our OCES board director from Carver.
I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second that.
Seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Pass 400. Before I do the next meeting, we're going to go back to the FY18 Plymouth County budget vote. If Mr. Malinowski can fill us in on that.
Yes.
Excuse me, if I want to make sure I understand this. Helen is our representative to Plymouth County, so she would
Yes.
cast the vote. Carver's share is what, 5% or whatever?
1.63%, I believe.
1.63%. So,
0.69, close.
so that basically, as we listen to this debate, Helen can go, and if we all didn't like it, she could vote for it, and if we all liked it, she could vote against it. She doesn't carry our instructions with her, she carries our consensus with her. She votes as an independent member the way she wants to vote. So I believe.
I would think so, but I also would have enough faith in
Yes.
whoever we had as representative would carry forth with the feelings of the board.
I guess my only point was we don't have to take a vote on it. We simply need to let.
No, but we're voting on it, well, actually, I would like us to take a vote on their budget so we can definitively be telling them in pretty much clear terms, our impression of what their proposed budget is for FY18.
Well, I guess my only point is that Helen is not bound by that vote.
No, but I think we need to take the vote anyway, so she has no doubt what our feelings are. Or if we're a split board on it. So if we could have an update, Mr. Malinowski.
Yes. As you may recall, several years ago, the Plymouth County was having some significant financial issues and had to do some major reductions in staff. And with that, there were other concessions that were made throughout the organization. It appears this year, based upon their new revenues, that that's going to be going from an approved budget last year of $9.68 million to $10.17 million. $300,000 of that is coming from the Registry of Deeds and recording fees, and another looks like $225,000 is coming from deeds excise tax. As a high year for both. With that, they have apparently negotiated with their unions, and across the board, they have 3 different unions. The increase of COLA plus STEP is from 3 to 3.8%, non-unions 3%. The Register of Deeds and the County Treasurer, they have a 5% increase. And they are also moving the county administrator from 76 to 90,000, and the deputy treasurer from 66 to 75,000. Those last two, they've felt they've done some regional surveys, and they feel that those individuals were underpaid. In addition to that, my understanding is they're adding 3 new positions. 2 of the positions are at the Registry of Deeds, and my understanding is that there is long lines there, and they're trying to help reduce those lines, so those positions potentially could be justified based upon their the usage that's happening. The third position is they're going to be adding, an, if I have the term correctly, an entomologist, which in essence is an insect expert. That's going to be able to provide services to all 26 communities, particularly as it relates to some of the tick issues that we're having with the Lyme disease and the Zika virus and for mosquitoes, because Plymouth County does do the mosquito spraying around the county. So there is a reason why they deal with the bugs. We as a town really don't deal with the bugs. We may do some limited pesticides or in certain areas, but not town-wide. So, I mean, I guess that is appropriate as well. I think one of the major concerns that people have been bringing up is the commissioner's salary is going from $15,250 to $28,000. When I did speak to representatives of Plymouth County, they said that years ago that's what the budget or salaries were, but they did take a pay cut a long time ago. So they're trying to increase that back to what it was. There have been some communities that have voted and instructed or requested that their advisor from the town or representative doesn't support their budget. I really haven't dug into their budget enough to know all the details. Just the one thing that jumps out is just the commissioner salaries is being a relatively, large increase. from the entomologist. I actually think that that's probably a good thing because, here in Carver, our Board of Health doesn't really focus on that. So if the county's going to do that, at least somebody's doing it. So I could see that as a positive piece. So, as I said, some communities have voted against this. I don't have a tally of who has and who hasn't. I know Pembroke voted against it, 4-0 to 1. But the county commissioners asked to speak to them tonight. It's not on their agenda to reverse their decision, but I know that has been done. I know Plymouth has voted against this. And I believe the vote at the meeting is going to be on May 11th. So that's pretty much my update at this point.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Serving on, as our representative, I've gone to most of the meetings, and I have right now, without Tom O'Brien elaborating, I have some real concerns about a lot of these proposals for increases. I do want to share that the Registry of Deeds did lose positions a few years back, and they were struggling without those positions due to the lost revenue. So that makes sense. So two questions I would have is, I lost my train of thought on the two questions, is one, should we wait for Tom O'Brien to elaborate? And I can't think, I truly lost my train of thought on the second question, it was important. And so I'll come back in a second.
Do they have to, our next meeting's May 16th, I think. Do they need an answer from us before that?
Well, the May 11th is when Helen would be, voting on their budget at that meeting. Now, there's nothing to say that, Helen, you can't reach out to Tom, and I'm sure that the county commissioners and Tom are going to have a very extensive presentation on the 11th before they ask
I
for
know
the
what the
vote.
question was, okay.
So,
Yep.
I believe there's ample time for you
Okay.
as the representative of the town to get more information.
Okay,
This has just been what's presented to me. I did have some other concerns when I spoke to representatives from the Plymouth County, and they put those at rest. For example, Plymouth County oversees the Mayflower Health Care Program. And with that, that's one of the budget items that are in here. But what I was assured with is that the Mayflower Health Group pays dollar for dollar what the cost is to the Plymouth County. I didn't ask them the follow-up question, does that include the OPED cost and the retirement cost? I should have asked them that question. But, those are the things that we need to be aware of, too.
the question I had was, did Tom elaborate on where the excess revenue, the additional revenues are? I know you mentioned 300,000 from the Registry of Deeds, 225 from deeds excise tax. Can I surmise that those increases are because construction is improving and the, refinances? I'm trying to figure out why they had an increase in the Registry of Deeds, and there's got to be more revenue that was improved upon this year.
What it looks like here is that their budget's going up about 575, hold on one second, it's about $500,000. And the revenue
okay, so-
coming in from the Registry of Deeds is up about 500,000.
But that could be 1 year.
Could be. And, last year, yes, it could be. But that's a question that I think that the Register of Deeds could better answer. I do know that they did increase some of their fees, so that could be accounting for it. I think the thing that we all need to be aware of, and what Carver practices now, is a sustainable budget and making sure that we live within our known projected revenues.
Right.
And, what they're showing here, it doesn't go out, more than the proposed FY18. So I don't know what their long-term projected revenues are. It's just that the budget went up to 10.17 million from $9.68
So it is
million
all in the
this year.
registry.
Mr. Clark?
As we've walked through this and in looking through it, Again, my wife being a title examiner, she goes over to the Plymouth Registry. It's absolutely, they need
We
additional
do need
personnel
it,
over
right.
there. The Lyme disease is becoming an epidemic here in the South Shore. So having someone, and, you know, you've always been able to call Plymouth County and have them come spray your yard for mosquitoes and so forth. So they provide some valuable services. My concern, as I look at this, and it's too bad Mr. O'Brien's not here, but my concern is, I understand that the commissioners used to make that much, and then they took a cut, and now, but I'd like to see them take it back, you know, a little bit at a time, making sure the budget is sustainable and that it's going to be there all the time. Some of the unions and some of the personnel, instead of 5%, maybe get 2.5%, and then do it again after that. So I'm not saying that I'm against the entire budget, but I think the way they're going about it and taking a giant chunk all at once, what I'd like to recommend is, or make a motion, is that we vote against this budget, but carry the instructions to, with Helen as our representative, that if she is presented with something that is more moderate and that she's comfortable with, that she could then exercise her free judgment and vote in favor of it if she feels that the budget is adjusted to something that she's comfortable with.
Do we have a second on that motion?
I can second that. I'd want to add a little
'cause
bit
I-
to it.
Yeah, we're going to have more discussion.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion made and seconded. Further discussion, please.
Okay.
David?
Is this an all or nothing type of a budget, or can we say, you know, we agree 76% of what you're asking for? Is that the type of thing that this is? Do I not understand?
I don't think it's us. Again,
Well, we have a portion in it, right? I read it, and I want to tell you, it's like 70-something pages of a budget. It was quite boring to read it. And I read things about dredging in there, and, you know,
You have to be at the
what
meeting.
was...
But again, Helen's our representative who would cast the vote, so that, basically, we can inform her that if we're comfortable, like we just saying, of a portion of it, that's the message she can carry to.
Okay. That's what I was asking.
meeting. Yep.
We're not all or nothing. We can say, Helen,
Correct.
80% of that we're comfortable with, or something of that nature.
But what I would say, is, I was thinking the same way Ron was this afternoon when I was looking through this. But now that I see that the new revenues came from the Registry of Deeds, it's bringing back nightmares of this town with utilizing one-time money to put into salaries. So I also agree with the Registry of Deeds positions, because that was heartbreaking in terms of the excess work that was being done at the registry, and there was nothing we could do about it at this meeting, and also the entomologist. But all these other increases, it worries me if we were to go forward with any of those until we have a better understanding from
Good.
Tom O'Brien in the,
Which is, I think we're saying the same thing, that
We are.
if they've got 500,000 and they're using 500,000, maybe use 2 or 250, and then have a cushion of 2 or 250, and then if things change next year, you can still handle what you voted this year without having to cut people back again.
I'm just being a little bit more conservative than you, Ron. What I'm saying is, I think they should hang tight for a year. Unless
do
they-
anything?
And not do anything with these increased salaries. That's what I'm
Okay.
getting
And
at.
again, this is where I defer to you, because you're going to be sitting there for the entire presentation that we won't have access to. So I certainly would rely on your judgment to make the call at that time.
Question, Mr. Minalowski. Do we know what their health insurance is? Is it a 75, 25, 50/50?
I do not know the answer to that question. I'd be shocked if it's anything lower than 75. It could be.
Well, that's what I'm just saying, you know, that's the sort of thing I'd like to have more knowledge of. And I mean, I'm just looking at when they had the list of all the compensation, it would have been really nice to know what the compensation was last year, just as what it is this year. You know, how much did the Register of Deeds go up to reach $124,758.40?
It's what we always ask for when Michael
Right.
puts the budget together. What was it? What's it going to?
Exactly.
Right,
So
exactly.
to me, you know, and I agree that I'm not happy with just, well, this is what we're spending here, kind of, sort of, and this is what 18 is, and that's it. How do we know that it's a sustainable budget? And I
Yep.
think that's something we work very hard on, and I think we owe it to town of Carver to
Taxpayers.
push Plymouth County to be doing that
Being
also.
the same thing.
I'm comfortable with relying on Helen's judgment, and I certainly think she has a sense of where we stand.
And you know where I stand anyway when it comes to budgets, so.
And why this is important is that every one of the 26 towns is liable for what Plymouth County does.
That's right,
So if Plymouth County goes defunct,
right.
We're on the
let
hook.
me rephrase that word. If it follows suit like some of the counties in Western Mass that no longer exist, all of the OPEB liability from the sheriff's department and everything is shifted to all the towns at a prorated share. But then the towns then become the responsibility for their unfunded pensions and their unfunded OPEB liability. So although I did see some increase in here, last year there was a slight increase in OPEB.
And they're
this year
keeping,
was
it's
matched.
it's the same for FY '18.
Right, I
They
mean,
didn't
that's an
increase it at
area
all.
where, I think everyone needs to be aware of what is their liability and how much is that really impacting? And is that someplace to look at too, to fund more?
Yeah, I think there's enough areas that we have concern with that I think, I agree with Mr. Clark, that Helen, I think, has a real good sense of where we're at on that, so. And if no other discussion, we'll put that motion to a vote to basically,
Decline.
well.
Vote no on the budget that's
Basically
presented.
give you leeway.
And, yeah, our opinion on the budget, but Helen's
Right. Our
judgment.
opinion of the budget is no.
Correct.
All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Hearing none, passes 4-0-0. And with that, that brings us down to, I'm sorry, Plymouth County, you didn't get here in time, but oh well. Next meetings, we have to determine a joint meeting with the school committee and Board of Selectmen for early June. Other than that, our next meeting here will be May 16th, unless something earth-shattering happens before that. And then just for the rest of the summer, the 6th of June, and then we get a little break and come back on the 1st of August and then into September. With that, I will take a motion to go in executive session.
To discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining negotiations with the unions, Public Employee Committee and Group Insurance Commission, Healthcare, and with respect to non-union negotiations with all non-union personnel not under contract.
We just had a curveball thrown at us, ladies and gentlemen.
We certainly did. We just voted.
We just took a vote. I'll go to the pleasure of the board. Do you want to give the gentleman from Plymouth County a few minutes? And,
I absolutely.
Absolutely.
Sure.
think we
all right,
should.
we'll hold off on the going into
I'll
executive
pull back the
session.
executive session motion then.
Okay, that motion's pulled back for now. Gentlemen, come on down. Please identify yourselves.
Mr. Chairman, do you want to give kind of a quick summary of what we just did?
Yeah, just to give you guys where our thinking is, we're not happy with the budget. We think, to us, we can't tell if it's a sustainable budget or not. Carver, we worked very hard. We have a budget that, not only, complete recap of last year, the current year we're voting on, and then going out for another 9 years. It's a 10-year budget plan. So we make sure we're sustainable. We can't see this budget. I mean, you said you had increases from registry of about 500,000, and so you want to just go ahead and increase the budget by 500,000. And to us, to make sure for fiscal continuity and going down the road, we're really hesitant to just use all that for FY18. And so we'd authorized Ms. Baroni as our representative to Plymouth County to basically let you guys know, if you hadn't gotten here, that we can't support the budget as is. We do like the idea of increasing the registry of deeds and the entomologist, but the registry of deed by 3 places, but having the direct, the hierarchy get a pay raise, it really, and for me personally, after watching the state pull that same thing and basically give them all themselves a pay raise, because, well, it's been since whatever long time it's been. we have to look at the fiscal realities. We're just in a situation where we're laying off up to 10 teachers, increasing fees for students to participate in sports and things like that. We have to run a very tight budget here, and I have a hard time. So that hit it up, guys?
General consensus.
Okay.
And I think we empowered our representative that if Helen goes and attends the meeting and there are changes, compromises that she would find acceptable, that we would encourage her, understanding the consensus on the board, to use her best judgment in whether to move forward or not.
So,
I just have one other thing, and I just want to emphasize that I think the sustainability was a concern too, is we all know several years ago, there were some significant issues you guys had to address. And as Alan was trying to lead out with the budget process, the $500,000, is that a sustainable number once these increases are put into effect to sustain that budget? And I think what we all want to avoid is, a year from now or 2 years from now, having to repeat what happened 5 years ago. And that's what Helen was going to get some more research on. In addition to that, there were some other questions on premium payments for healthcare.
Yeah, when you renegotiated your contract for your unions, what's the split? Is it 75-25? Did you go to, like we've done in the municipal side here in Carver, new employees go to 50-50 to help with these ever-increasing healthcare costs and try to get those under control? Was any effort made in that with these new contracts with your unions? And if you could identify yourselves to the mic, please.
And I did share with them the fact that the Mayfair Health Group does compensate dollar for dollar what the direct cost is. One of the questions that also came up, does that also include pension liability and OPEB liability that's paid for back to the Mayflower Group as well?
All right, so we ready?
Welcome.
No, welcome. Thank you. Actually, it's great to be back. By way of introduction, I'm Tom O'Brien. I'm the Plymouth County Treasurer, but more importantly, I served as the state representative for the town of Carver for a number of years. I call them the golden years. It is always great to be back here in the town of Carver. To my left is the county administrator, Frank Basler, and I did want to let everyone here know that the entire team, including the 3 county commissioners, were just at a meeting in the Pembroke area at the Pembroke Board of Selectmen, and did our best to get here, of course, following every speed limit that was set to be here. And all this shows, because we all left at the same time, is that Frank and I have a harder time following the rules and regulations than the commissioners. 2 of our commissioners have joined us. They may want to add in. I think they're going to allow me to take the floor for now. I'm looking for them to nod yes. I've got 1, I've got 2, I'm in.
Well, we need to go ahead and put a little bit of an apology. Mr. Clark was the chairman of the board. We reorganized tonight, and they were nice enough or foolish enough, whatever, to make me chairman, and so the meeting's gone a lot faster, so.
Oh, man.
Well, congratulations.
Not gonna end.
Congratulations and condolences to the two victors of the most recent election. And it really is a pleasure to be here. 2 of our commissioners have made it so far. Sandy Wright, the chair of the board. Commissioner Greg Hanley is here. He's a resident of Pembroke. Commissioner Wright is a resident of Bridgewater. And our 3rd commissioner, Commissioner Hanley, Commissioner Pilata, rather, obviously follows every rule and regulation. Although that surprises all of us. He is on his way here and should be walking in shortly. And he'll, of course, be like, oh, great, Tom took the microphone. I'll never get a chance to say anything. I do want to say, after we give the highlights, if you have questions of me, the administrator, or the commissioners, that's why we're here. I was actually going to compliment the town of Carver, and I'll still keep compliment on the table, because you folks were one of the few towns that, despite numerous emails going back and forth from the town and perhaps some from the county, you folks said, hey, let's get the county in and ask some questions before we take a vote. It has been very frustrating to us to have some members of our 27 members not even ask any questions about the county budget before taking a vote to instruct their board to do one thing or another, whatever that may be. Support the budget, don't support the budget. Right now, it's running about 50-50. We think when people get all of the information that you folks are smart enough to be soliciting tonight, it will be a no-brainer because you'll learn all of the answers to the questions that you have about the fiscal responsibility of Plymouth County and this particular budget. And I think not only once you learn all of this information will you be more comfortable with coming to the advisory board meeting, but comfortable with the direction the county is heading. I'm going to try and hit some of the highlights quickly because I know you have a tough agenda and you probably have other things. I want to answer as many questions of the 10 that you threw out there. I wrote down as many of them as I could, and we'll see how I do because at the end, if you have other questions, we want to make sure to hit them particularly. Let me just say, though, that there's a misperception about the county government budget. I'm going to hand out the first little tidbit. I'm not just going to hand it to Michael, and he'll pass it around. This just shows budget trends of 4 entities over the last 8 years. And the entities we chose were the federal government, the state government, the town of Plymouth, gee, I wonder why we chose them, and the county of Plymouth. And there have been a lot of comments about the county budget, but I think it's important for everyone in this room to know, and anyone kind enough to be watching at home, that since 2009, and this may shock people, it may not shock people, the federal budget has gone up 15.9%. That means from 2009 till this budget that they're about to vote on, we think maybe, hopefully, 15.9% increase. The town of Plymouth had a 20.3% increase over that same period of time. Here's the shocker to me. It's clearly I'm no longer a state representative. The state budget has gone up 41.6% in that same time period. However, and this is the point that appeals to the conservatives that reside and live and love the town of Carver, the county budget has gone down 2.6% over that same period of time. That's actually less dollars being spent today than was being spent in 2009 on the county budget.
These aren't inflation-adjusted dollars?
They are not inflation, it's dollar for dollar. If you adjust it for inflation, county government looks even better. I would suggest there is not a single other entity in the Commonwealth or in this country that can say their budget is less than it was 8 years ago. So just to dissuade you from this perception that the county is profligate, I think this chart shows pretty quickly that's not the case. But let's get into the fiscal 18 budget because that's where
Could I ask just one question?
Absolutely.
If you added 2018 on here, where would the green line go to?
2018 is that last green line. Oh, 2017.
2017.
Yes, it does. I apologize. If you add 2018 in, it comes back up to about 0.17% above.
Okay. I just wanted to have a...
But what I'd love to do is add the federal, the state, and the town of Plymouth in there as well. Because I'm willing to bet they've gone up more than the county of Plymouth in that same time period.
We haven't.
The town of Carver probably giving us a close run for our money in that same time period.
I don't know about that. We're not going up as like the state and the town of
The
Plymouth.
other information that I just need to disseminate before I get into the nuances of the budget is there have been a lot of chatter. There has been a lot of chatter, a lot of comments. Everybody's weighing in their opinion, and of course it's easy. Well, the commissioners and their salary. Please understand that back in 2009, when the commissioner's salary was cut at the time, it was $28,000, was cut. It was stated by every member of the advisory board there that if the county were able to right the ship, turn around the county, begin to do some of the fiscally responsible things the towns were doing, that the salaries of the commissioners, and please think of it as the office, would be restated, restored, returned to the salary it was at the time, which was $28,000. So please understand that this is not a move to mirror what's happening at the federal level. This isn't a move to mirror what's happening at the state level. This is a move to follow what was said back in 2008, June 20th, 2008, to restore the salaries to the level it was back at that time period. It's not a grab, it's not a huge increase, it's a restoration. And I think we need to put it in context. The commissioners said this isn't going to happen until the county has really righted its ship and can compare itself favorably to the town of Carver. This isn't going to happen until we go out and look at what other counties are paying their commissioners, not just here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, but around the country. And this isn't going to happen until we've taken care of restoration of jobs at other departments and made sure that the county ship has been righted. And they felt, and we feel, and we want to discuss with you, that fiscal 18 is that year. That this is the year that we can show not only has the county improved dramatically each of the last 5 years, but we're in a position to begin to do some of these things. So let's talk about the highlights of the FY18 budget. In terms of the budget itself, the salaries of our unions, and we have 3 unions, increase based on a COLA and a step. It's hard because each union is different, but that is and approximates about 3%, maybe a little bit more than that.
The COLA step combined?
That is, this year.
Do
Yep.
we know what the COLA is by itself? Is that a 2% or?
It's
is
a
that what?
1%.
Their steps are 1%.
Nope, the COLA is 1%.
Oh.
Their steps,
I'm asking you the step.
yeah, the step is anywhere from 1.4 to 2.5,
Okay.
approximately.
So then they'd be going up 3.5% then.
Correct. Yes, once you add in the step, that's correct. Yep. The non-union folks are getting a 3% COLA. This after years of not having increases. They're getting a 3% COLA. We had 2 positions that were adjusted based on performance and analysis of like positions. That's the position of the county administrator. And we can't believe that we're getting our county administrator for $90,000. That's the new salary. You folks know what town managers, town administrators are being paid. You know what other county administrators are being paid. We have a bargain, and we felt that that really needed an adjustment. Likewise with the deputy treasurer, we felt there needed to be a salary adjustment to that position. That position is going to $75,000. Again, we can tell you that is a bargain compared to other like situated people in towns and in the counties. And then the elected officials, other than the commissioners, it was felt that because over the last 10 years, our total salary increase over the last 10 years has been less than 12%. That's over the last 10 years, that it was time to give an increase. So we, the elected officials, were getting less than 1.2%, while most of the other people were getting anywhere between 3 and 4%, maybe 2 and 4%. So it was suggested that we get a 5% COLA for us. And then, of course, you have the commissioner's restoration. Well, that's salaries. All in all, it is still a remarkably low percentage of the entire budget. Again, fiscally managed very well, and the total cost of personnel of the county, including benefits, is less today than it was 7 years ago. That's important to note. Let's talk about the MMHG situation, the Mayflower Municipal Health Group, and our employees. So our employees had a split not that long ago of 90-10. Over the last number of years, we've negotiated that down, to answer your question, Mr. Chairman, and it's an excellent question, to 75-25. All the while keeping our COLA costs down because our unions understand the challenges we face, and so they're all at a 75-25% split. Given the efforts at the Mayflower Municipal Health Group, our total increase for the county for our health insurance, and we actually still have some of the higher cost plan, is only 4.6% increase. And in fact, I have some numbers that compare the Mayflower Municipal Health Group rates with some of the other joint purchase groups around here, and we are by far the lowest, and so our increase has been very low, and we're very happy about that and hope to continue that. So the total increase in that part of the budget is only 4.6%. I would say that's remarkable, and other people would be surprised. We're also prepaying in this budget, and I can't emphasize that word enough. We are prepaying, did I say that? Prepaying our retirement liability. So not only are we paying the obligation that we own to the Plymouth County Retirement Association, but we're adding on top of it. Why are we doing that? Well, it's not just because I'm the treasurer and fiscally responsible. It's not just because I'm the chairman of the retirement board. But our commissioners have taken the leadership role and understand that if you prepay your retirement liability, you're guaranteed what? You're guaranteed the estimated rate of return of the retirement board, which is currently 8%. So any dollars that we're prepaying them, we're getting credit for that rate of return, even if they don't earn that rate of return. It's a no-brainer for us to begin to do that. Now, guess what? On top of that, the commissioners have charged me and the team to figure out a way to begin to overfund our OPEB. So we are contributing more than our annual required obligation to our OPEB liability. And I can't thank the town of Carver enough for being one of the first early adopters of the PCOT program, which I think has proven to be a huge benefit to the town of Carver. And we really appreciate you lending us Selectman Clark to serve on our investment committee, because when over the past year we've shown an 18.71% rate of return, he takes all the credit. And we couldn't do that if you guys hadn't sent him. I'd be taking all the credit. But he says, no, I'm on the investment committee, you're just the chairman. This is my credit, I deserve this. So we hope you're happy being in Pequot. Plymouth County began to fund after you folks did, but we've lowered our liability significantly, and we continue to do that. 3 years ago, the liability for, it's called UAAL, for the OPEB for Plymouth County was $32 million. As we sit here today, $19 million. Pretty remarkable. And you folks are going to begin to see some of that same benefit as well because of the steps you've taken. I have even more good news for you. You think that's enough? No, because the commissioners decided we needed a stabilization fund. How remarkable is it that towns have had stabilization funds all along, but the counties haven't? And this goes directly to your town manager's question and yours, Mr. Chairman, and others that have asked us this. How can the county ensure that they're not going to be in the same position they were 5 years ago? My answer to you is this: fiscally responsible planning on retirement, on OPEB, and we're funding a stabilization fund. So these commissioners asked me to lead the charge as a former legislator to get a bill passed that allows counties to have a stabilization fund. How clever. What a brilliant idea. And so we did. We marched up there, and surprise of all surprises, both the House and the Senate thought it was a great idea. They said, why wouldn't we allow counties to plan for the future and have a stabilization fund? Here's another big shocker. It wasn't to me. The governor thought it was a great idea too, and last year signed the bill into law that allows counties to have a stabilization fund for the first time. Do these commissioners sit around and wait? No. They said, we're going to fund this immediately. And last year, when we had a surplus of about $650,000, they dedicated $300,000 of that to stabilization. And they've tasked me with, over the next 3 years, making sure we have 10% of the total cost of the budget set aside in stabilization. If you want to talk about fiscal responsibility, I think these commissioners are exercising it in spades. And they're really committed to making sure that the challenges that befell the county before they arrived, before I arrived, and certainly before Frank Basler was here, don't befall us again. So how do we make sure that doesn't happen? We fund stabilization, we pre-fund retirement, and we continue to fund OPEB on an aggressive schedule. So I would suggest, quite candidly, that this is a budget that any advisory board member should be proud of and be able to sing to the heavens about what they've done. Now, if that wasn't enough, what they've done, too, is tasked us with saying, listen, we need to make sure we address a concern that our communities have, and that is around tick-borne illness. Regrettably, Plymouth County has become the largest, highest incident rate of tick-borne illness in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts over the last 2 years. It used to be Barnstable. Barnstable has their own entomologist. And Barnstable came and made a presentation to us and said, listen, you need to have an entomologist if you want to drive down that rate. Why doesn't each town hire one? Well, that's not going to work. That's the reason we have county government, to provide regional services. So these commissioners said, treasurer, administrator, make sure that we can do this before we do anything else, because as a service we need to provide to our communities. And so they funded the position of an entomologist in this budget for all 27 communities, not just their salary, but their benefits, their health insurance, their retirement cost, and enough for supplies so that entomologist isn't going to be sitting there at a desk with no phone, no computer, no microscope, and no educational and promotional materials. The idea is such a good one that today the House is debating an amendment to give us another $50,000 to begin to provide additional educational materials throughout the county to let them know we have this entomologist. We expect to use that entomologist to drive down the incident rate of tick-borne illness. And guess what? For the town of Carver, it's even more important. Why? Because ticks aren't the only pests we deal with. You folks know better than most, particularly in Plymouth County, that there are other insects that need to be attacked. Gypsy moths, and our cranberry growers have a breadth of ideas, but they probably want somebody they could call if they need somebody. Well, they're going to have somebody. And it's not going to be somebody in Boston. It's not going to be somebody at UMass Amherst. It's going to be somebody in Plymouth that's going to be available to answer those questions and those concerns. Those are the types of programs that county government should be offering, and these commissioners insist that we offer. In addition to that, they heard the Register of Deeds say, hey, I need a few more people. Not where we were a few years ago. Technology has improved such that that's not necessary. But these commissioners made sure we funded 2 new positions at the Registry of Deeds, new positions at the Registry of Deeds. We had some retirees. Those are going to be filled. New positions, which include benefits and salaries. And benefits along with the salary. In addition to that, there are a couple of programs that get funding, including the firefighter training program and others. The commissioners made sure got the same level of funding, if not a minor increase in a few instances where they made the case to have an increase. The last question I wanted to make sure I answered was the one that the town manager had asked about MMHG. Does that dollar for dollar cover their benefits? Absolutely it does. It covers their benefits as a percentage of payroll for retirement and a direct dollar for dollar for the health insurance benefits. Now, here's the rub. Not only are we getting the dollar for dollar, we're getting an additional amount of money for me to serve as the financial administrator for the Mayflower Municipal Health Group. So the county actually derives an additional source of revenue. It's not a lot of money because we don't want to overcharge Mayflower. Mayflower's administrative costs are lower as a percentage of its claims than any other joint purchase groups in the Commonwealth. If you want that data, we can send it to you. And so we charge them $65,000 for all that financial management. Can't get it any cheaper anywhere else. Why? Because it's a service we provide. So what we think we're presenting to you is a budget that makes sense. Yes, there are components I understand that may cause somebody to ask the questions that you folks are appropriately asking tonight. You should ask these questions, but I would suggest when taken in light of the history of the county, the work that's been done over the last 3, 4, 5 years to turn the ship around and to put us in a position to help towns like the town of Carver, that not only should you be supporting this budget, you should hold it out as a budget of really fiscal responsibility. The last little bit that I need to impart, last little bit of information before my administrator will add anything I've forgotten or the commissioners will want to weigh in, is where are we in FY17, right? Before you do FY18, you want to know where you are in FY17. Well, I'm pleased to report, largely because of the efforts of the commissioners and some of the municipal purchasing programs that we have, we expect that we will finish this year with a surplus of about approximately, and please, we're a few months away, so don't hold me to this, although I know, Chairman, you might, approximately $600,000. And the commissioners are already committed to dedicating that revenue to what? Those programs we talked about, stabilization, OPEB, retirement, capital improvement. This county is far better off than it has been in 25 years, maybe even longer. Now, there are a lot of people that deserve credit. I'll certainly take my fair share. But without the leadership of the commissioners, we're not going to be in that position. They are not looking to do anything other than what other counties already do. They've put together a very reasonable budget. We're here to answer any questions. We hope that what you task Ms. Maroney with is to come with an open mind, listen to all of these presentations, listen to what the other towns have to say, and make a decision about this budget. We think it's a fiscally responsible budget. We're very proud of this budget, and we really, really appreciate you guys asking us to come in before you take a vote, because that makes the most sense to us. Frank, did I miss anything in that presentation?
All I have to do is pass out the Ginzu knives, and you got the full offer on from the commercial. And I would just say the one thing I would add was that for Register Buckley, in addition to the 2 fully funded positions, we added $10,000 worth of overtime so that he can manage in a more effective way, flexing when he needs to at the end of the month. We get a better bang for our buck, especially considering benefits costs these days.
Can you repeat what the 2 new Registry of Deeds positions are?
And do you guys have a
Said
copy of
something
the
about
budget?
benefits.
Yes.
Yeah, we do, but
Yep, it's the recorder and the land recorder. The 2 on the, on page, they're marked vacant.
We're going to get you to the exact
no,
page so you can have
that's
the exact
okay.
title.
I just wanted a general idea because, through you, Mr. Chair, is it okay?
Go right ahead.
Page 45, land court recorder and recorder, the 4th and 5th position down.
So they're not bringing back the positions that the registry lost a few years ago. These are new positions.
So I think the short answer to that question is yes. What we do is, and what the commissioners have done, is work with the register and say, okay, times have changed. You don't need the same number of people. If you need people back, where would those positions be? And the register has identified these 2 positions as the one he needs. They're not the same as the ones that were lost.
And for me to, thank you, for me to better understand, the past few years when I've gone to the meetings, it was painful to see the loss of the registry positions. And I know that you just gave a very quick overview how the revenue has been improving and you're doing great. So I guess I have 2 questions, because I'm huge on going back to Carver. It will never leave my mind that we used one-time money to fund salaries. And I was opposed to that then, and what I'm seeing right now is that we were told that the 500,000 increase in the budget was coming from the Registry of Deeds. So 300 and, where was it? 25,000 for recordings and 225,000 for the deeds. And so my question to Michael earlier had been, what triggered this big increase? And when you're saying that it all has to do with OPED and the improvement in health insurance, but we still had to let go of those registry workers, even when you were benefiting from those savings, or I should say, we as the county. So I'm just trying to get a handle on, is it accurate that the 525,000, or, roughly, I closed my book, is that revenues that we saw benefit for this year through the registry, or are you saying that the improved revenues is from the OPED and health insurance continuing to reap benefits?
The improved revenues come from a number of different sources. The registry is clearly one of them. I need to always say, and the registrar I'm sure would want to be here, he's out of state right now, the registry is merely a collection vehicle. Those are revenues that are paid for by the taxpayers of Plymouth County and are going to be paid based on the number of transactions that happen. So that's one source. The other sources are the savings that we effectuate through these other programs. However, the commissioners have also adopted new bulk purchasing programs. Our municipal vehicle bid is generating an additional $200,000 a year as a result. So it's not just new monies being collected at the registry. However, your more important question, and maybe I can get there,
Thank you.
is this sustainable? So what I can tell you is that the registrar and I sit down and we review receipts over the last couple of years, and we make a determination as to what the revenue will be in the next fiscal year. We're actually a lot closer than the state is in our estimation. So we believe that these revenues will come in FY18 together. We believe they are sustainable. However, no one can predict that. So what is the county doing about that? Creating a stabilization fund. The reason the county had its challenges before was because we didn't have a stabilization fund to rely upon. So when the collections at the Registry of Deeds dropped precipitously, we had no recourse. We had nothing we could do to deal with that. So now we are positioning ourselves not only through solid fiscal management on other fronts, but by setting up the stabilization fund so that if there is that crisis in the housing market, which may happen, which will probably happen because it's all cyclical, what we can't decide is when, we'll be better prepared for that. So these are sustainable revenues. I know that you will want to hear from the register and answer that question directly. I wouldn't want to answer for him, but we think that the total package is certainly long-term sustainable.
Because, Tom, I have a concern that the first thing I thought of when Michael mentioned the increased registry fees, I know that the market is booming right now. It's starting to boom in construction. And so my fear is that. And so are you saying that now that we have the stabilization fund, that's going to be a cushion? So you're saying if the construction industry starts to slow down again and these revenues are not there, that you're going to pull from the stabilization fund to pay the salaries?
So what I'm saying is that fortunately, we have other areas of revenue generation that we didn't have, the other bulk purchasing bids that we have. We've effectuated some savings that we can continue to effectuate. However, if in a crisis, we need maybe one-time monies from stabilization, we at least have stabilization to do that. It wouldn't be for the salaries, but for some of the other operating components of the budget that we would need to have. We do believe that the salary component of this entire budget, not just at the registry, but in all of our departments, is sustainable without the need of stabilization monies.
If I could, we've diversified our revenue sources. We've added, this chart that I handed out does not include any Registry of Deeds funds. These are other programs such as consulting. So we do procurement consulting for people that are looking for, feasibility studies. We do grant administration. We do procurement such as our safety vehicle bid management. And from that, that's diversified us so that we just don't have to rely on the deeds funding.
Mr. Clark, don't mind.
Oh, no, I'm just pausing.
The, for your stabilization program, have you established a specific policy, say, you're going to fund the budget each year to 95% and 5% automatically goes to stabilization, or is that going to be a game time decision, basically, after you look at the whole budget and see what's left over, and then that amount will go into stabilization? In other words, is there a fiscal policy? In Carver, we have specific fiscal policies, and every year, X amount goes here, X amount goes there. Have you reached the point where you're comfortable enough saying, we're going to build a budget based on 95% of the anticipated revenue, and we know 5% is going to go off into stabilization? So you've already got a little bit of a buffer in there anyway in case, has that been established? And
So the good news is we get to follow Carver's lead here. The state just passed us allowed to have a stabilization fund, so we were just a few months ago even allowed to begin to fund it. We are, as far as I know, the only county that is actually funding it. These commissioners have committed, and we expect that we'll have additional revenue this year, to applying some of that revenue immediately into stabilization, which would be great. I think as we finish this year, they're going to adopt a policy, or I would certainly be recommending, sometimes they take my recommendation, sometimes they don't, that they adopt one. However, what I can tell you, and using it as an example, is what they've done on OPEB. They have a policy that we are going to contribute a certain minimum each year toward OPEB. And I think they'll adopt, although I would allow them to speak for themselves, adopt that policy with respect to stabilization. But it certainly makes sense to have it be a percentage of revenue each year that goes into stabilization. But what I'm hoping is by the end of year 4, we will have 10% of our budget set aside in stabilization. That's our goal, that's our target. I think my commissioners would agree with that goal and objective.
and that's something,
I've got
again,
3
similar to what
nods.
we do here.
Yeah.
And maybe I missed it in here, but you sort of go back over 4 or 5 years of what expenditures have been, but not overall revenues. And I think part of our concern was, as we were talking, was that you were spending to the limit. And I think that speaks to what Selectman Maroney spoke about, is that it looks like, okay, we got an extra 500,000, let's spend an extra 500,000. I'd be curious that, 5 years ago, did you have $300,000 left over in your budget? 4 years ago, did you have $500,000 left over? So that, or have, as opposed to you're spending to the dollar each year?
So just so you know, we had no choice. We were required by state law to spend to the dollar each year. We could not, by law, have a stabilization fund. We couldn't have any money that wasn't spent. So it wasn't until this year when we passed the ability to have a stabilization fund. Now, you can imagine those challenges. And I can tell you that there were years in the 80s and 90s, before I was treasurer, that they had plenty of monies and they had unreserved fund balance that they would roll over to next year. And guess what they had to do? They had to spend it. They were required to spend that money. So fortunately, with the efforts that these commissioners have adopted and our efforts up on Beacon Hill and using me as one of their arrows in their quiver to work with the legislature, we're getting them to see that long-term planning is important and allowing us to save for the future.
I just got to walk you back a second. So you come into the end of a year, and it looks like you have a surplus because some of your anticipated expenditures did not reach the levels that you thought they would.
Or revenues exceeded expectations.
You are now under pressure to find a way to expend those funds.
Or to put it into next year's budget and spend it.
You can roll it over.
That's the way the government works.
That's changed. So fortunately, because of the efforts of this group, and Plymouth County has been the leader, the other counties are saying thank you. We're saying that doesn't make any sense. Now, the other advantage we have, some look at it as a disadvantage, is that we have plenty of unfunded liabilities that we can now put money to begin to plan for that. So we have, some would look at that as a challenge, but we now have places that we could put monies that come in over expectations or because we've cut back expenses that won't eat into next year's budget and become a consistent expense.
You spoke about some people that'll be getting, I guess, a 1 point COLA and maybe 2 to 2.5 points of step, and indicated that they'd had some years of 0. Now, they've always had the steps, I assume, but no COLA? Is that what you're referring to?
Some of them have steps, but as you know, in a step system, when you hit the top step, you're out of steps. So while some employees have had steps during that time period, others have not.
But what about the COLA over the last 4, 5, 6 years?
So they've been negotiated zeros for a number of years.
Well, I guess, what is a number of years, I guess?
There was 3 in a row when we came up with this contract. As a matter of fact, there were furloughs in 2 of the years. There were furlough dates preceding the zeros. So it was 0, 0, minus,
Negative
it was
3.
minus 3% and then minus 5%. So because we had 6 furlough days one year and 10 furlough days the next year.
Do you have specific, I hate to try to pin you down, but it'd be nice to know, is that all within the last 5 years, or was this 10 years ago? I mean, it's easy to go ahead, and we've been burned by this before, of being told, well, we've had zeros and zeros, but, there's a big time frame. How recent is that? See, that's the type of information we like to have. Like, thanks to the board, I've ended up negotiating all the municipal contracts with our town administrator, Mr. Milanowski, and, that's one of the first things he said, well, we've had these zeros, and it's like, yeah, years and years ago.
So I was able to negotiate, I was the lead on negotiations for the last contract, which was a 2-year contract, which was for fiscal 17 and fiscal 18. Registry Union got a 1.5% COLA on top of their step increases, of which only half of the union were eligible for their step increases because they had maxed out. We also had a 1% for our other 2 unions, along with their step increases. So that's 18 and 17. 16 was minus 5% because there was 10 days of furloughs.
Okay, so you had furloughs for FY
Yep.
16.
That
What
was-
about 15?
15 was 3%, minus 3% because it was 6 days of
Okay,
furloughs.
that's what I was getting at. This was
Yep.
all, this
And
is
then there
fairly
was-
recent things. You're not
Yes.
talking about back from 2008.
No,
That's
not
what
the-
I was trying to get across.
Yeah, and then actually preceding the minus 3% was 0, 0, 0.
Yeah, I understand.
So the county has been very tight fiscally and the team stepped up. I will give great credit to the unions for understanding the predicament that we've been in, so that we as a team can fight through that.
Mr. Robertson?
I don't have a specific question, just maybe a general overall one here. The piece of paper that you just handed out was Plymouth County revenues, and 2014 fiscal year 2014 was 8 million, 8.4-ish, and 18 fiscal year 18, you're looking at 10.1 million for revenues, quite a jump there, I would have to admit, which is good. I'm not saying bad on that. And then there was a program income creation. If I added those all up, which I'm not good at math, it looks like it would be, I don't know if these are the same numbers as you're showing here, or if it's in addition to, but it looks like a substantial amount of money. And then on this chart, you gave us cumulative changes to the budget was a minus 2.6. There just seems to be something not setting right with me on this.
So let me see if I can address the 2.6.
Okay.
That goes back to FY '08. So our revenue sheet doesn't go that far back.
Okay.
But if you went back to 2008, you would see that our revenues were $11 million.
Okay.
So from 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, they kept going down.
I was just looking at 14,
Right, so.
8 million.
Right, so what we do, you can even see on that little chart we gave, you can see that the number has started to trend up,
Yes, I get that.
and that will go above the 0 mark in FY '18. However, if you think about that in terms of the state budget or the federal budget, that's remarkable planning on the part of the county.
No, I wasn't disputing that at all. It's apples and apples you want to compare to. You comparing yourself to the state is, just,
That's not a good thing to
that's,
do.
Well,
anybody can be better than the state.
we'll compare ourselves to the town of Plymouth, or some of the other municipalities.
Yep.
What we've had to deal with, and Selectman Clark and Selectman Roney hit the nail on the head, when times were good, we had to spend the money that was coming in. We either had to spend it in that budget or immediately in the subsequent year's budget. And so, as the times got bad, and I will say, the smartest person in Plymouth County was my predecessor, John McClellan, who regrettably passed away a few years after he left and turned it over to me. Because he left right as the market was tanking, and I came to the county with an $11.9 million budget that lost 10% each of the next 3 years. What a horrible time to come in and try and figure out how to deal with that immediate loss of revenue with no other ways to make it up, and no ability to save any penny that you were able to scrimp together. So I hope that answers the question about the timeline and how we got there, and that certainly things have been improving since FY14.
I'm good.
Okay, I'm going to take a little different tact. You know, you presented a very rosy picture, and I do recognize that all of you have done a good job in, righting the ship, and I want to make sure it's going to stay righted. But I have to ask, I'm assuming you get audited every year. What have been the results of the last 2 audits? See, we get, like you, we get audited, and we've been getting some very high marks from our auditor, and I'd like to know what the auditors found and what steps you've gone ahead to make any corrections of any of their findings. Because generally, an auditor's not going to be quite as rosy as you're coming across now.
Dan's very excited, so I think it's good.
He's jumping out of his.
I have a feeling I know what the answer's going to be.
I had to ask, though.
Yeah. And, Mr. Chairman, we can report that all of our audits are available online for you
Good,
to
I was
review.
going to ask you that, too.
Yes, and these commissioners, the reason they're chomping at the bit, and I'm just not going to let him take the microphone, 'cause he'll be here for an extra 5
I
minutes.
was going to say, we were ahead of schedule, you guys came in, so.
Well, and I do want these commissioners to know that when we came in, you guys had already taken a vote, and we're trying to have you reconsider that vote based on some good information, or at least be open-minded to hear additional if you need to. But when I arrived as the county treasurer, the audits hadn't been done to FY02, so that was in FY07. And then when Dan became the chairman of the advisory board, they still hadn't been done because the then commissioners were saying that it wasn't their responsibility. These commissioners got elected, made it their responsibility, did what they had to do. We hired a new audit firm. All of our audits have been caught up, and I will say the last 3 have been remarkable. Our auditors rank us as one of the best in the country in terms of counties. They audit predominantly counties in New Hampshire, so maybe
Excuse me,
that's
you say
not-
one of the best counties in the country,
Yes,
not the state?
not the state.
Just want to be
There aren't
clear.
that many
He's moving
counties
on
in the
up.
state, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, I have to go out because, as the chairman says, we only have 6 to compare ourselves to here. But around the country, now, part of that advantage we have is we're smaller. Most of the counties, you guys are world travelers, I'm sure. Most of the rest of the country has very active counties. I know this is hard for us in parochial New England to realize, but regional services are the wave of the future, whether we want to acknowledge that or not. Individual communities are not going to be able to provide all the services that they've provided for the last 200 years. Just not going to be possible. And so these types of things like the entomologist are the direction we're heading. And what we're finding in Massachusetts, and this is fascinating to me, is that those counties that lost their counties are now trying to get them back. And so you see the Franklin Council of Governments forming itself as a regional entity. It's happening in Hampshire County. They're like, oh my goodness, partnerships with 1 or 2 towns don't really work in some areas. It needs to be 20, 22, 27. Long held out as an example of a good county is Barnstable County. And the things they do are some things that we're hoping to do over time when towns are ready to have us do it. But it is the wave of the future. It's going to happen, and we need to plan and prepare and be in a position to do that. The audits are a key part. Notice how I'm circling back to your question. They're up on the website. We want you to look at them because we're very pleased with what we're doing. I will say, because they had to do 3 of the last years over the last year and a half, that we're in the middle of the audit for FY17. So that, well, I'm sorry, for FY16. We were hoping that would have been completed. We're hoping it will be certainly soon.
Hey, you're playing catch-up.
We are playing catch-up, and we're almost there. But we encourage you to come to our audit meetings. Please contact our auditors. I think you'd be impressed with what they have to say about the operations of the county.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just a real quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
Would it be at all, I know time is pretty tight, but would it be at all possible for you to have a draft, at least, stabilization policy created for the meeting on May 11th?
You know, I would never want to speak for the commissioners, and that's what they do. They set policy. They're here, so I think you'll have to ask them that.
I think that's a valid question.
It is.
You know, I know you've stated it's an intent, but do you have a fixed policy already written that directs you to do that? Yes. You may.
Come on.
Come on up to the
Dan,
microphone
come on
now.
up.
Microphone and
You-
identify yourself.
I'm
and speak
sorry,
clearly
even though Tom wants
so
to
that
go
our
ahead.
home audience, Nielsen ratings are huge, so you have to understand.
They just went down.
I'm going to scare your ratings away. Dan Plata, I'm County Commissioner. I was chairman of the advisory board for, 5 years before I got elected as commissioner, and I'm listening to all of this, and I'm cringing back here because it brought back such frightful memories. The policy on OPEB, the policy on stabilization, the policy on sick leave, the policy on all of those things are being developed. They've all been touched on. Will we have written drafts by the meeting on the 20th? Probably not, but we'll try. I mean, we will try at your request, of course.
Excuse me, is the meeting the 20th or the 11th?
11.
I'm sorry.
The 11th.
The 11th, I'm sorry.
That's why we maintain his
I'm sorry.
limited time at the microphone.
I wish it was
apologize.
the 20th
I
because we have
apologize. I
a
thought
big
it was originally the
fundraiser.
20th.
It's May 11th.
May 11th.
Change it.
It changed.
We have a big fundraiser in Carver,
Percent vote.
No, I mean,
but I have a voice.
no, and you know what? Your voice is,
Take a shot at a guy with a bad
No, that was
voice.
a shot
I
at
would take
me.
a shot at my.
she can take a shot at me all the
I
time.
don't think that was a shot.
So-
You're not a chair anymore. You stop.
I think his time is done. Thank you.
So, anyway, we'll try. All right, at home, we'll try.
Dan, you sound terrible.
I've been
You've been talking a lot?
I've been yelled at by 26 towns.
Okay, you look like you really want to ask or say something, Mr.
Just a
Malinowski.
couple quick questions, just following some of the comments the board made prior to you getting here, and I think we covered most of what you were there, and the board's concern was about sustainability, which I think you've addressed a lot of that here. I have a couple questions on that. And I think the other thing they were just concerned about was the appearance of the commissioner's salary going such a big jump in 1 year versus being staged over a couple of years. Tom, you mentioned, is in 2008 that the budget was 11 or $10.9 million?
You know, I don't have that budget in front of me. Do you have that number?
I've got some numbers that are 10.8, $11 million, but it's around that number. Is that about right?
What year?
2008?
2008.
Because 2008 was the year that you had that $2 million hit, so to speak, cut that you had to go down. Between 8 and 9?
I think it might have been between 9 and 10, but anyway, what's the question?
He's going to talk about the cut of the salaries. I just wanted to quickly talk about that. I cut him.
Yeah.
I was the guy who cut him.
No, the total revenue that the department, the commissioners are running under was around $11 million in 2008.
Yeah, didn't the state take a lot of our funds away that you were?
In 2009, 2010, the state took the sheriff's department away from the county, and there was interest accounts that got wailed on.
Yeah.
They left behind retirement liabilities that took a few years for us to straighten out that are in the audits.
Yep.
The-
We all own a piece of
Yeah,
that.
you all owned a piece of that
Right.
until the county commissioners got that straightened out last year with Tom's leadership up on the Hill. But, you know, it doesn't look good. I get it doesn't look good that the salary's jumping, but the salary's the last piece of the puzzle when we did all the cuts. And I led the charge for the cuts. And I led the charge because the county commissioners didn't do their job. It was always a $28,000 job. Norfolk and Bristol was 28 at the time. They're 30 whatever and 40 whatever today. We said we'd come back and we'd restore it once the county was restored. And the last piece of the restoration has occurred. So we're back honoring the vote of that advisory board. Because when we cut it, it was like the world came to an end. You can't cut your salary to zero. You know, we wanted to cut it to zero.
Yeah, I think
And they said you can't.
$7,500.
Yeah.
State minimum.
There was a minimum that someone pulled out a law. You can't do it. So it was very controversial at the time. But that was a while ago, to your point, you know, with the unions. But the truth of the matter is, it's always been there. And we want to get the county back to the glory it was. And this is the last piece of the puzzle. And the advisory board's going to have their vote, and we're going to move forward. And in 5 years, as Tom indicated, the county's going to be providing a lot of services. Because we're not just throwing people on. Somebody asked a question about the registry of deeds. We have found other ways to deal with the loss of personnel. Some of the personnel wasn't needed. We did a complete review of everything the county does during those bad times. You're never getting 15 people at the registry, ever. Throw me out, maybe you will. But as long as I'm there, it's not going to happen, because they're not needed.
So
Sorry.
from 2008 till now, as far as the breadth of what the county's done, it sounds like the major item that you're no longer overseeing is the sheriff's department. That's been taken over by the state.
And that was not part of that $11 million.
No,
That wasn't part of the.
It was
Okay, that was my
not.
question. So
The
really,
interest-
what you're at right now is, in 2018, you're really going to be just shy of what your maximum budget was in 2008.
Correct.
And you're still doing the same services,
We're doing
Correct.
more.
services than what you had before.
Okay?
Yep, the loss of the sheriff didn't impact that component of the revenue.
I guess, unfortunately, whenever you're dealing with anything that's political, we have the same problem here. You know, it's a lot easier to say, well, we're just going to go ahead and increase it, get us halfway back this year. And as long as we have another year and we're continuing to grow, then we'll go back to the full 28. And I just think it'd be an easier sell for you a little bit if, you know, if you'd at least consider between now and the 11th, you know, get you back halfway this year for FY 18, the rest of the way FY 19, and if you're still going good, maybe even a raise in FY 20.
And for context, before some of you arrived, what was discussed before is we just had our annual town meeting. As part of that annual town meeting, there were 11 teachers that are being laid off. So they're just doing their job, trying to pinch every penny and want to understand what they're doing, and I think you've explained a lot of that. And that's what you're seeing is, you know, the entomologist, increasing the additional staff at the registry, reformatting how you're doing it. Those are all good things.
I'm just trying to help you with
Yeah.
perception here. I'm not saying that there would be a deal breaker for us, you know, we have to talk to the board. But again, a lot of what, especially the county level, I would think, you know, right now, the perception of the state is, well, you don't want to go there. So the county, you've done a lot of good work. I mean, as you've clearly shown us. But, you know, you always have to, unfortunately, think a bit of the perception part. And sometimes you may have to do something more incrementally just for the PR value of it. You know, that's all I'm saying, to at least think about it.
Appreciate the comment.
And through you, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
I just want to make a point to the residents as we're making this very difficult decision, that I have served as our representative for the past few years. And I have to tell you, when Dan was mentioning that they cleaned up all the audits, that was a painstaking process. And I cannot tell you what these new commissioners, well, they're not new now, but when you took over, what they have done for the county is absolutely amazing. That's why it's even difficult having this conversation about thinking about whether or not to say yes to the increase for the county commissioners. You guys have surpassed what I would have ever comprehended in terms of what you have done over the past
You know,
few
that means
years.
a lot to me.
It does. So if I might just, and I know Selectman Clark has 2 points that I want to make for the commissioners, and I'm hoping Dan goes back to his seat. But that may be up to
Yeah, you
him.
look a little uncomfortable.
Will someone make an amendment to his salary?
Who works for who?
I thought I could be vicious. Wow.
Well, he did already tell you the wrong date for the advisory board meeting. What I wanted to say, because it's easier than having them have to defend themselves. 2 points. One, you talk about doing it in stages. In fairness, that was their game plan. And I wish they'd stop talking in the background so that everybody could hear what I'm about to say. 2 years ago, they brought their salaries from $7,500 up to 15 and said, if it continues for 2 more years, they'd bring it up. So it has been done in stages. That has been their intent. I think they hear very loudly what you're saying. I can tell you, they're very receptive to these types of meetings, and they appreciate, and I can say this, and it's harder for them, they appreciate the chance to make these presentations. It's been very frustrating and very, very challenging to have communities take a vote without hearing a word about the budget. We've had 2 communities, I can tell you firsthand, have taken a vote and instructed their member to do something without even seeing the budget. That, in my mind, is not only undemocratic, but it's unconscionable. So, you know, we're out there now saying, well, here's the thought process, and I know they really appreciate these comments, and they hear what you have to say. I will say this, they also understand the pains that the towns are having now. Why? Because we went through them 5 years ago, 6 years ago. I look at the county as the canary in the coal mine. Any challenges we're facing 5 years ago, you folks are going to be facing 5 years hence. So I'm hoping the experience that we have with good fiscal management is the experience you folks will begin to have in 3 or 4 years. But they know what you're talking about. They understand the challenges you have. So they don't do this without thinking of all of that. They don't put together this budget and present it to the advisory board without taking that into consideration. But the number one priority is beginning to provide ways to help the towns. And so I think that bespeaks to what they have in front of you, and I know they're looking for your due and fair consideration.
Anybody else got anything?
Great
All
job.
right. Is that, is it yes, or you're thinking?
Yes, I had, that's my sign for thinking? I guess I just wanted to say that, that I'm glad we had the benefit of the presentation, because I think the color that we got now certainly has me in a better frame of mind in looking at the overall disposition of the budget than what I had prior to having an understanding. I mean, you...
Reading the raw numbers.
Right, reading the raw numbers. For instance, I mean, you answered the questions we had about the sustainability of the budget, because you've been running basically a surplus for the last few years. We didn't know if you were just going right to the penny. Of course, I didn't understand you had to spend to the penny, separate issue altogether. I feel much more comfortable. I do, however, still sort of lean that maybe you might be going just too far back to get everything all at once. I think some modifications I'd still like to see that. However, I feel far more comfortable that Helen, in going to the meeting, and no one would ever instruct Helen what to do. She would take our counsel.
Or could.
But I can't imagine anyone telling Helen what to do. But I personally, I don't know if we want to change our vote to something more neutral, or leave it the way it is, but I just would want to go on record as saying we did vote against the budget as presented. It was our actual vote.
Subject to
yeah.
additional information.
Exactly.
To help.
Exactly.
Particularly
So
on the commissioner's salary that may change her mind.
I don't know if the rest of the board would be willing to take a more neutral vote and leave it in Helen's hands, but I just want to go on record to share with Helen my thoughts that I feel better about what we've heard, and would leave it to your judgment to
David?
cast your vote as you see fit.
I would leave the vote as it is, because we left it open that if Helen sees something that we didn't see, we authorized her to, or said she could speak for us at the meeting. So I would like to just leave it as it is and let Helen run with it.
I appreciate
understand
that, but since we heard so much more information tonight, I'd like to just get a pulse of whether you are thinking the same way Ron is, that you're feeling a little bit more comfortable, or if you're still like absolutely not. Are you more in line with going with an incremental? So just to give me a pulse, not to change the vote, but just to give me an idea on.
Okay.
Well, I mean,
I don't know what to say to that.
You get a
To
lot
not
of information
earn the
tonight.
wrath of Elaine as she's trying to come up with the notes for this one.
Yeah.
she's going to be making it up, in other words.
Since we took a vote without benefit of the presentation of the commissioners and Tom, I would be happy to first take a motion that we rescind that vote, and then have a new motion made.
I'll make a motion to rescind our prior vote.
Second.
Discussion. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, passes 4-0. Now, is there a new motion based on the information we received today?
I feel comfortable making a motion that the board actually take no action on the budget and leave it in the charge of our representative to make a decision after getting the full presentation at the budget hearing.
Do I hear a
I can
second?
second that. Yep.
Okay, motion
have
made and
something to say.
second. Further discussion? Ms. Maroney, you going to be comfortable with that?
I'm just going to call you all chicken hats because you're leaving this
Chicken
very big
hats?
decision to
I don't
me,
think
but
chicken hat is the phrase.
I feel very
The
comfortable.
impression the impression I
feel
have
very
as part of the
comfortable.
discussion is that we feel a lot better
You feel better.
about the budget
Yep.
than just, like I say, when we're just reading these numbers off the get-go with no background information.
Right.
I'll probably give you, if you want, I'll give you some ideas somewhere down the road of what would have made us easier to, to look in these numbers. I feel very confident Helen has a good read on how we all feel.
Yeah. I
So
feel
as long as she's
comfortable.
comfortable with the way this motion was made, any other discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion as given, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Passed unanimous 4-0-0.
And on behalf of the commissioners in the county, we really thank you for the opportunity. We really are glad that Helen is your designee. She comes to every advisory board, and we look forward to hearing whatever she has to say. Please understand, if you have thoughts and ideas between now and May 11th, please share them with the commissioners, with the administrator, or with myself.
I did feel at one point there were Ginzu knives coming, though.
My head. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Coming, we really appreciate it.
Good to see you.
Thank you very much.
Sorry you're draining your voices
Thank you.
tonight. Good to see you again. Yes, you will. Yes, I do. Sandra, now I know why.
You were the
Yeah,
strong side.
yeah.
You're related to Marty, are you?
Yeah, no, not a problem.
We have people in this.
Right.
Get up and say, hey, listen, I'm going to do this with these guys.
Yeah.
What you just said.
Governor?
Mr. Selectman.
You got it.
Well, I can't say, the mics are mine.
Thank you for that very lively presentation, as usual.
We do our best. Thank you. Thank you for waiting and giving us.
Oh, God, yeah.
Did you go anywhere last week for school vacation?
Not a problem.
Challenge, but
Thank you very much.
taking those on.
Good.
All right.
You stayed local? You didn't go to Disney World or anything?
All right, that being the case, now we'll take a motion to go into executive session.
Go ahead.
I move that we go into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining negotiations with unions, specifically the Public Employee Committee and Group Insurance Commission, IAC, and with respect to non-union negotiations and with all non-union personnel not under contract, i.e. the town administrator's contract. That may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the town if held in open session, and to reconvene in open session for the purpose of adjournment.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Mr. Robertson?
Dave says aye.
Alan Dunham says aye.
Ellen Maroney says aye.
Ron Clark says aye.
All right, we are now adjourned into executive session.